Hello, welcome to the replay. I'm Jason Butler and thanks for joining me on tonight's live, which is all about pensions, which sounds a bit of a boring subject, possibly might be miles in the distance, but actually it's quite important, and we're going to widen out the scope of what we mean by pensions. And I'm 51, coming up to 52, so I'm nearer to needing to draw on pensions and wealth than probably most of you watching. But it does mean also that I have a different perspective from many people because I can see both sides. I still got sort of earnings potential in the tank, but I can still see that time when I may want to make paid work optional. I work because I want to, not because I have to. And I do think with pensions, often people sort of think it's one of those things they can deal with later, or rather what pensions represent, which is really planning for a time when we're older, right? And we can't or we don't want to work. And that's really what it's about. And if you've ever seen any stuff by Warren Buffett, he says if you don't find a way to make money work for you, you will work until you die. So if you want to work till you die, fair enough, not a problem, carry on as you are, just keep living for today and don't worry about the future. But the chances are that you are going to live quite a long life, that you probably aren't going to want to work certainly at the same intensity and level of effort that you currently are forever. And you'll probably want some choices as you get older and as life presents you with different things. So as I say, we're going to be talking all things pension. I've already got some questions that have been posted, so thank you for that, for the people who posted those. I'll come and answer those shortly. If you've got a question, chuck it in the comments box. No silly questions, remember. I'm always happy to answer any thoughts or ideas that you've got there. Bear in mind, this is not personal advice. I should just say this for any of those kind of people who seem to think that, get a bit upset about this. I'm not giving personal advice. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to share insights, I'm trying to enthuse you, I'm trying to encourage you, I'm trying to enlighten you, I'm trying to educate you so that you can make wise decisions with your money, okay? And nothing I say should be construed as personal advice, and you shouldn't go and do it without consulting an advisor if you need to or taking further advice. So just sort of say that just in case anyone's watching the replay who wants to sort of get their blood pressure in a boil and says that I shouldn't be giving people advice. I gave people professional advice for 25 years, so I've been doing that a long time. So yeah, okay, so why are we bothering? Why are we worrying about talking about pensions? Well, pensions is just a term for a form of saving, a form of wealth creation for later life. And I'm gonna spend a little bit of time talking about the most tax advantaged pension saving wrapper, the personal pension, and also I'll touch on defined benefit schemes, because I just think they are so underutilized and misunderstood by people that I think you're just leaving money on the table. And why would you want to leave money on the table? So let's just have a little reality check here. Now, the average household income in the UK is around about £36,500 at the moment. That's from the HMRC's wealth report. And that's household income, and that's from all sources. And it doesn't take a lot to think about, even if you've got sort of, if you're just living a modest lifestyle, that to want an income in when you can't or don't want to work of, say, 24,000, it doesn't sound a lot of money, does it? To want to have between £1,500 and £2,000 a month. So that's where I'm couching my overall discussion. I'm not saying that's what you've got to aim for. I'm not saying you couldn't live on less, and I'm not saying you need to have more and you can't have more. I'm saying you can. Let's just focus it on the average household income of about 36.5, nearly 37,000, and someone wanting around about 25 grand a year when they can't or don't want to work. Okay. Now, what's going to affect how much money you're going to need when you can't or don't want to work? Right. One of the biggest things is if you've still got to pay rent or mortgage. That is a really big expense. And I know because I don't have a mortgage, and I'm not saying that to brag, I'm just saying I don't have a mortgage, so I don't have that expense. That's one less thing to worry about. But if you haven't got a house, and this is one of the reasons why buying a house in the long run makes a lot of sense, is assuming you haven't got the term too long when you're buying a house, then you're going to have your house, your accommodation costs is paid for. So in a way, buying a house is a form of planning for retirement. So there's nothing wrong with you, when you're buying a house to factor in, okay, so I'm not going to have to pay rent after 20, 25 years, 15 years, however long your mortgage is. Certainly avoid 35-year and 30-year mortgages, because that's just, you're floating yourself into, you're giving yourself a false sense of security that you can afford the house. You can't. You need to get rid of the mortgage in a fair time. So buying a house is a form of paying for later life, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. So you can pat yourself on the back if you bought a house. If you bought a house, give me a thumbs up. If you bought a house in the last couple of years, or if you own your own house and you're buying it, give me a thumbs up, just so we know if we've got household owners here. So you are already making a step towards being slightly more secure in retirement, because you won't hopefully have rent to pay, and you will have paid off your mortgage by the time you either want to reduce work or the time you stop work. So yeah, if you've just joined us, thank you for joining us. We're talking about everything to do with pensions, but really we're talking about the tax benefits that are available to us to help give our savings a boost, to help us in later life, okay? So yeah, so buying a house is a form of saving towards later life. We've just said that. So I want to give you a factor, and if you've attended my lives before, I may well have given you this factor before. This is a rough rule of thumb. Now, why do we like rough rules of thumb? Not because they're spuriously accurate, because they're not. Not because they're perfectly right, they aren't. Okay, and not because they're the answer to all your problems, they're not. What they do is they give you a sanity check, a first look at the numbers, or just a sense of whether you're going in the right direction. And that's half the battle with planning your finances. Anything to do with personal finance is about, am I going broadly in the right direction? Okay. So this is a number. The number 30, okay, is going to give you an idea of whether you've saved enough or how much you might need to save more. Okay, so what you do is you say, okay, what's my lifestyle cost going to be when I can't or don't want to work anymore? That stage when I want to be financially independent. If you wanted £25,000, which I mentioned earlier, let's say you wanted to fund a lifestyle of 25 grand. Whatever number you want is fine, but let's work with 25 grand. 30 times that means you'd need a pot of 750,000. Now, if you were to go and buy an index-linked annuity income when you were 60 for £25,000, you'd need £1 million fund. And the reason why there's a difference between this factor of 30 that I'm just mentioning, you use as a rough rule of thumb, and the true cost of buying an annuity is because, generally speaking, you're not, an annuity is the belt and braces. That is where you're going to an insurance company to buy insurance against living too long and not taking any investment risk. So it's going to cost you more, okay? The reason why I use 30 is we're assuming you're going to have some investment capital, that you are going to take some risks with your capital, because that risk means that you may need less money to fund your retirement. It doesn't mean that that is what you should do. It's just a more pragmatic way of thinking. So let's work on this 30. So use 30 as your rough rule of thumb to work out if how much you're going to need to save. So 25,000 quid times 30 is I need to fund a 750,000. Now it sounds a lot, doesn't it? Right? It sounds a lot of money, especially if you've only got 5 or 10 or 15 grand in your pension pot or other savings. But remember what I said, if you're buying your own home now, that's also contributing towards later life, because you won't have rent to pay, and you will have paid, hopefully your mortgage will have finished. And you can always downsize, but don't rely on that. But you could always downsize or right size to a smaller property, or you could even sell the house and use the money and perhaps rent somewhere a bit cheaper. So 750,000 quid, if we need roughly, and I would say to you, if anyone see my live when I said how to make your first million? And I think some people on social media just got haters, as I call them. They got a bit, oh, this is awful, who is he? What's that? It wasn't about getting rich quick and Bitcoin or any of that stuff. What I was saying was you need to aim for, broadly, you want to aim for about £1 million quid, give or take, okay, of building wealth over your lifetime. And it can be done, but you've got to start early. Okay, you've got to avoid your money being consumed on stuff that you don't need, that's not serving you. You've got to avoid buying too many depreciating assets. Still have fun, still enjoy life as you go, but it can be done. And the reason why that's sort of roughly aiming for £1 million over a lifetime in today's money is because pretty much that will get you somewhere between 25 and 35 grand a year of income. Possibly more, possibly a bit less. But don't worry if you feel you can't get there, or you're never going to get there, or you're a bit older, or your circumstances are that you can't earn the money. It's just going to give you a rough idea, okay? What you've got to do is, whatever you do from after today's live, just take that next step. Don't worry about the quantum. Oh, it's 750 or £1 million quid or 500,000 or 300. Just think, okay, I know it's a big number, okay? It's not going to get any cheaper if I leave it, okay? So one of the things we've got to remember is that when we can't or don't want to work, it's not optional, okay? There's going to come a stage when we are not going to either want or able to work. And therefore, we've got to have built our wealth. but we don't want to be living like a monk today and find out suddenly we've only got 5 years to live when we're 65 and there's no point. But the reality is, the earlier you start, the cheaper it's going to be. So let's look at some numbers. Now, if you were to invest a large proportion of your money in equities, okay, which is, if you've got 30, 40-year, 50-year time horizon, in the past, that's done us very well. It may well be returns are much lower in the next 10, 15 years, but capitalism does generally work. So let's assume that you could just get something like, 2/3 of what the return has been in the past. If we got 4% real return on our money, that's after inflation, then I'm going to give you some numbers, what it would take for you to save over different periods of time to build a fund of 750,000 quid, just to give us a sense of where we're at. So if you had 25 years, it's going to cost you 1,500 quid, just under. If you've got 30 years, it's going to cost you just over 1,000 quid. If you've got 35 years, it'll cost you £820. If you've got 40 years, it's going to cost you £634. Now, that's before we worry about tax relief or incentives or employer contributions or other things that are going to happen. So it starts to be, what that's really telling you is the earlier you start, the cheaper it's going to be. The higher the return you get, the bigger your fund. The longer your time horizon, the more the compound interest is going to work for you. So if you're young, you just take that next step. Now, let's just look at this again. Anyone here know anyone who works for the NHS? Give me a thumbs up if you know someone personally who works for the NHS, because I'm going to give you an illustration now of, but first of all, the value of what we call defined benefits pensions. Because defined benefit pensions are pensions where the employer takes all the risk, and each year that you work, you get a guaranteed amount, okay, that's yours, that's payable to you. It's be revalued each year, and it's payable to you from a certain age. Some career, it's 55, some it's 60, 65, some it's 68. And that's guaranteed. That's called a defined benefit pension. Now, I did some numbers. Let me get my my nurse calculation. Now, we've all heard recently about the NHS, the pay deal. They're only getting inflation. Isn't this good? Is this bad? Whatever. Well, here's the thing. What no one talks about, with all public sector scheme workers, they all have access to a final salary pension, okay, which is the gold standard. So let me tell you a number here. We take a band 5 nurse who's done 30 years of working. I know 30 years is a long time in nursing because it's quite a full-on job. They pay roughly somewhere between, they would have paid roughly about 7.5% of their earnings to a pension. The employer pays the other 20.6% cost of the scheme. And roughly, a nurse who finishes on £45,000, which is pretty, it's quite common in nursing, senior positions. And we're not talking about running everything, we're talking about just a senior nurse. He or she would have earned a pension after 30 years of £25,000. So that's just a sort of a reasonably senior and experienced nurse, roughly, give or take. Maybe more or less, depending if they have career breaks and stuff. Now, that fund would cost you £1 million to go and buy from an annuity company, a pension insurance company. So that gives you an idea of, first of all, the cost of securing guaranteed pensions, which is why you're probably going to need to stay invested as you draw money in retirement. But it also shows you the value of final salary schemes in the public sector. So it's not just about, you do not get access to final salary pensions. Virtually nowhere in the private sector offers final salary pensions. And the reason is because they are so expensive. So the employer pays 20.6% and employees pay somewhere between 5 to 14.5% on their pay earnings. That's NHS. So a 30-year nurse with a £25,000 built-up pension after 30 years finishes earning about 45 grand a year. You would need £1 million to have his or her same pension. So I know it's a tough job, and I know paramedics is a tough job, and teaching's a tough, all of that, fine. But just those pensions they have are like rocking horse poo. You just do not find them. So I'm not saying that to be envious. What I'm saying to you is to give you an idea of what you need to be saving to just have a modest income in retirement. All right? Give me a thumbs up if that was a surprise to you to hear those numbers for someone who is a nurse who's worked for 30 years, who ends up with a 25 grand a year pension from the NHS pension scheme, having paid something like 6-7%. Give me a thumbs up if that was a surprise that is £1 million pension pot that they end up with. And the reason I say that is because that's what you do need to aim for, just to have a modest income. But start early, take wise investment decisions, utilize all the incentives, okay? Keep your expenditure low and you'll get ahead. So now I had a question. Let me have a look. I can't remind. I'm not sure if the person's on. I think it was Mariposa. I think you asked the question, didn't you? You asked me about you've got 2 defined benefit pension schemes, both with about 5 years built up. Should you cash them in or I think stick with them? I think that was the question. If I've got that wrong, put it in the comments box, Mariposa, and ask me again. Yeah, so I think you wanted to know, is it worth leaving them there? Well, let's just, first of all, I can't give personal advice, as you'll appreciate, and defined benefits pensions is a complex area, but I'm going to tell you what happened with my wife when I met her, and then I'm going to share with you my learnings from that, okay, and what that you can then take from it, because it's always better if I tell you a story, and then you can learn from that, can't you? Because you know, we're not stupid, none of us. Once we know the information, we know where we're going. When I met my wife, she had I was going through the paperwork because obviously that's the game I was in. Yeah, okay, thank you for that. So when I met my wife, I found some paperwork she had, and she goes, "Oh, I said, what's this?" She said, "Oh, it's a pension plan, and it was worth £13,000 with Scottish Amicable in some crappy fund, with profit fund. I mean, it didn't go anywhere." I said, "Well, what's this from then?" She goes, "Oh, well, I met some bloke in a bar once and I got chatting to him, and then next minute I know, you know, not literally the same night, obviously, but she basically ended up transferring a pension out from Lloyds Bank, where she was previously working for one of the subsidiaries. And I got the numbers here because I couldn't believe it. She gave up, her pension was 660 quid. She said it seemed nothing. It didn't even seem worth it. So she said, and I got 13 grand lump sum transferred into my own pension. I thought that was better. So I said to her, "No, it wasn't better. I'm going to reinstate you in the scheme because the guys missold it." And this was at a time when advice wasn't very good. So I went through the rigmarole. It only took me 18 months to get her reinstated back into the Lloyds Bank pension scheme. And that was I got her back in that scheme in, I think it was 1996. Okay, so that's 25 years ago. Now, her pension entitlement today is now, bear in mind it's 660. It is now 2,600. And she's online in 2 years' time for it to be nearly 2,800, okay? And they would offer a transfer value of £108,000 to give up those benefits. So whereas she had £660 25 years ago, and they gave her 13,000, which was basically 19 times her pension, they would now have to give her 41 times her pension, so 41 times 2,600 to give her 108,000 now, equivalent transfer value. So what that tells you is in that period of time, yes, she could have invested it somewhere and it could have made some money, but she hasn't had to do anything. She hasn't had to take any risk. She hasn't had to worry about it. She hasn't had to make a good choice. She hasn't had to pay any charges anywhere. And she's got nearly coming up to 3,000 quid in a couple of years' time, which will be revalued between now and then. And if she wants to take a cash equivalent transfer value at the time, nearer to the time of coming up to taking benefits, she can. We don't need all that money. But, you know, it's there. So that's an example of final salary pensions are a great down payment, if you like. So final salary benefits that you've built up before that you're not working in the company, or new benefits you're building up if you're a public sector employee, they're really good down payment. And I personally would be, unless you're terminally ill and you're not married and you want to leave it to charity, or you're so wealthy that it doesn't even touch the sides and you want to take the money out and, you know, do something with it. I would be very surprised about most people giving up their final salary pension, even to transfer into their employer's new defined contribution scheme or to a standalone scheme. It can sometimes make sense to move from one final salary scheme to another final salary scheme, okay? So, but you've got to be very careful what the transfer value is and what the new scheme is offering you in terms of credit. So it's not always the case that you should be transferring one final salary scheme from an old employer to an active employer if you're an active member of a defined benefit scheme. So I thought that was interesting, that one. One of the good things about final salary pensions that are deferred that you have from old employers is that they are, generally speaking, revalued each year. They are not frozen. They have to be escalated. Depends on when you earn the benefits, and there's all different escalation levels, but generally speaking, it will be normally no less than the Consumer Prices Index, and sometimes it's RPI. In fact, in my wife's case, she's got two final salary pension schemes, and parts of them are revalued at 7% and 7.5% fixed. And one of them goes up at 5% a year fixed when it's in payment. So, I mean, you'd have to be absolutely off your trolley to give up a benefit like that. Where are you going to go and get 5% escalation? I mean, it's just with no risk, no hassle. And what that means for her final salary pensions, it means that she can take more risk with the rest of her pensions, the money that she's built up over the years. And another good thing about final salary pensions, if they're in deferment, is they're protected by the Pension Protection Fund, up to about 90% of about 32 grand. It does change each year. But what that means is if your scheme goes out of business and the employer behind it goes bang on, then the government steps in. If you're not receiving the benefit, the government steps in and pays you roughly, give or take, 90% of what you've accumulated, up to a benefit of about 32,000 roughly. It does change, do check it out. You can check out the benefits on the Pension Protection Fund website. But if you're thinking of transferring a pension benefit from a final salary scheme and it's more than a £30,000 cash equivalent value, you must take regulated advice from an authorised financial advisor who is a pension transfer specialist. And you will have to pay £2,000 or £3,000 or £4,000 for that advice. It's very complex. I used to do it. There's no get out of jail cards on that one. Okay, let's have a look. So that hopefully the question really answered to Mariposa's question is, if I had two defined benefit pension schemes and they were less than 30,000, 31,000, and I had a fair time between now and retirement, I probably would leave them there, okay? And I would focus on putting more, as much as I can, into money purchase, defined contribution schemes going forward, or building a property portfolio, or investing in business, or whatever you want to do, okay? I would leave that there and use that as a sort of down payment. When you get nearer to retirement age, you could think about taking a transfer value, particularly if your health has deteriorated or your circumstances have changed, and you might want to give up the benefits then. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, let's have a look now at another question here. Let's have a look at another question here. Is PensionBee the best provider to find pensions? Look, PensionBee are very nice people. They're very good at raising money for their business. They've got very slick UI, UX. The lady, I'm trying to think what her name is, Rovit or Ramit, a very, very erudite lady. I think they're doing good things for pensions in the sense that making pensions seem accessible. Are they the best provider? Well, personally, my pension, not all my pension, but my personal pension that I put money in myself over the years is with Vanguard. I keep it really simple. I can't afford to pay too much money to people who run my money. I just have life strategy. I use Vanguard life strategy, 80% equity, 20% bonds. My daughters use 100% equities, life strategy. I'm not saying you must use Vanguard. This is not a promotion for them. I'm saying that's what I use, and I use their platform direct. I don't want any whistles and bells. I don't want to buy commercial property in it. I don't want to do any loans from it. I don't want to do anything silly. I want it really simple. I want it really boring. I want it electronic, and I don't want an app. Simple as that. So PensionBee are a good company, but do compare them with people like AJ Bell, Hargreaves Lansdown with their app, and Vanguard. You know, I certainly, and an interactive investor, I'd be looking at those kind of companies, because what you'll find with a lot of these companies that are packaging themselves as pension sort of helpers is there's a fee for that. And if you pay more, I mean, what do I pay on Vanguard? I pay 0.28%, 0.26%, all in, everything, okay? And I can't afford to pay more than that to people because I need the return in my pot. I want to keep the more you pay in costs, then the less there is for you. And when we've got low returns, when we are probably into a low return environment, the more money you pay in costs, then that's less money for you. And over time, that compounds. You need to keep that money. But look, certainly they're good people, but do compare them with other alternatives. But yeah, I think they've got a very good service to help you if you've got a hodgepodge and loads of different pensions all over the place. They're as good as any in terms of giving you some support, giving you help and making things easy. And if it helps you make the right contributions, it might be worth you paying a bit more and using their service. Let's have a look here. What else have we got here? Yeah, okay. Now, got lots of people joining. God, it's busy tonight. So yeah, we were talking a bit earlier. I just want to recap for everyone. I was just talking about NHS and all public sector pension people have good pensions. And you never hear this mentioned when they're talking about their pay. And what I was explaining was that a reasonably experienced nurse who's done 30 years of service would have built up about 25 grand of pension. And that would cost you £1 million to go and buy an annuity. Or it would cost you £750,000 if you were going to sort of invest your money, build it up, invest it, and then draw it from an investment pot, okay? Roughly. These are all rough rules of thumb. And that was not to cause envy about public sector workers. They're entitled to that. One is they don't understand the value of the pensions that they are being accrued for them. And secondly, it illustrates to you the true cost, because those pensions cost the NHS and the employees about 30% of payroll. The employer pays nearly 21%. So just to restate that. Final salary pensions, I've mentioned that. What else have we got here? Now, let's just touch on the state pension before we then get into the bit that we're probably a bit more interested in, saving our own money. The state pension is basically a modest amount which is getting further and further away for you to claim. So roughly, the maximum you can have from the state is £175 and a few pennies. Okay, if you've done 35 years of contributing to national insurance, or having had your contributions credited as if you had, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, basically at the moment, the state pension kicks in at 67, but it is increasing to age 68. Okay, so basically anyone from 1970, 72, they're going to it's going to be gradually phased in, and basically anyone from sort of 73 onwards, you're going to be claiming from age 68, if they don't make it even further. So what the trend is the trend is for the government to preserve pensions, state pensions, but keep pushing the age at which you can claim it further and further away. Now there's a good thing and there's a bad thing. The good thing is that longevity, the people are living longer, so that makes sense, right? Otherwise people would be claiming for a pension much longer. But there's a smaller group of people who, particularly those on lower incomes, people in poverty, people who've got health issues, where their life expectancy isn't increasing. So if you've got hereditary illness or something like that, state pensions can be a bad deal for you because you may not be claiming them as long as people who are healthy or people who have more wealth. So the thing is to keep yourself as healthy as you can and make sure that you're not living in poverty, because that means that the state pension is more likely to be there for you. You're going to be able to get the most benefit from it. But the state benefit, you get credited on state benefit. Basically, if you're an employee and you earn over £120 a week, even if you don't pay your employees national insurance, you're still going to get credited as if you are, right? Okay, you're still going to get your state pension benefit entitlement. If you're self-employed and you normally, assuming you're earning more than about £6,500, you're going to pay Class 2 national insurance, and that gets you an entitlement. But you can also pay that voluntary, even if you're not earning £6,000, you can still pay voluntary contributions. I did many years ago when I was self-employed. And you can also pay Class 3 voluntary contributions. So if you've had some years, say you lived out of the country for 2 or 3 years, or you just had 3 or 4 years when you just weren't working, you can pick up those contributions and pay them voluntary. You've got up to 6 years to pick those up. And it's well worth doing. It's very, very good return on the money. And it gets more expensive each year as we go by if you don't buy those. So one of the things you must do, the state pension, we don't know what age it's going to be there for you. For me, it's going to be there at 67. For you, it's going to be 60, at least 68 for many of you if you were born after 1972, 73. But it is something that's going to be there, and it's worth you checking your entitlement. First and more importantly, to check your record, because the revenue sometimes do make mistakes. And if you go on to check state pension benefits, I'm just trying to have a look if I've got the website, but just put check state pension entitlement, avoid a couple of scammy websites that are trying to get you to buy things, and just go in, and you can, even if you don't have a government gateway for your tax affairs, you can do identity verification, and you'll find out straight away, and it will tell you what you're on track for, how many years you've worked, how many years you've got to work, and it will also show you your full contribution record, including any years where you missed it. So it says to me, I'm on track for my £175 a week at age 67, and all I need to do is work another 3 years, or rather I have to 3 more years contributions, and I can do that by just buying 3 previous years, but there's no point because I'm still earning and I'm still from different sources, so I'm still paying national insurance. I might as well just leave that. But it's important for you to know that, just to get an idea of what the down payment is. But remember, state pension is small, it's about £9,000 a year, and it's from about 68 for most people, and it's going to get later. It may even be 70 for you, so it's more like a backstop. So good website here for you is the pensionsadvisoryservice.org.uk. Lots of good stuff on there. If you're not sure what your pension age is for state or personal, I'm going to come on to personal now in a minute, go to the Which Consumer Association, Which ? Website, and they've got a thing called the Pension Age Checker. So it's Which Pension Age, Which ? Pension Age. And I'll tell you, he's got a fantastic blog that explains for any of those people either who are listening, watching, or who know someone who is older and who is nearer to taking benefits, say 10, 15 years away from taking benefit. Anyone basically born before 1960, 1962. Paul Lewis has got a May 2020 blog which explains about the benefits coming out the other end. So it's for people nearing taking benefits and how they can plug gaps. It's a really good. That's Paul Lewis Money blog, May 2020. Very, very good, very well written. He's a top guy. He's actually on my Real Money Stories podcast. So any questions, please chuck them in the thing. Now, I had one question from, I'm not sure if this young lady's on tonight, but there was a question about, she was in her mid-20s and she wanted to know, should she be investing her pension fund more aggressively? So I'm going to come back to that, if I may, in a minute. If that person is on, I can't remember the young lady's name, but if the person is on, or the young guy's name, just post the question again to me, so we know who you are and I can say hello. But I just want to have a run through now about personal pensions. Now, so let's just talk about what personal pensions are. Personal pensions is a tax-favoured savings account, which just happens to be called pension, okay? It's intended for you to be building up savings and capital for later life. So in that respect, it's not the same as ISAs and lifetime ISAs, although you can use ISAs, lifetime ISAs, and help to buy out. You can use all of those things towards retirement. There's no reason why you can't, but they have different tax benefits. And I'm now just going to walk you through the key tax benefits. I'm going to share with you some of the little tax planning angles and some practical examples. All right? Any questions? Chuck them in on the question box. We're all learning together. So, okay, let's just have a look at the pros. I'm going to talk about the pros on pensions. I just listed these out earlier, just came to the top of my head. Just in no particular order. First of all, tax relief up to 45%. Okay? That is not to be sniffed at. You cannot get that from a lifetime ISA. You can't get that from virtually anywhere else. You can do salary sacrifice. Now, salary sacrifice, I still can't believe it. If you get a chance, go to my blog, jason-butler.com. I've done a blog called, two blogs, The Budget That Wasn't. And I've also done a blog, the blog last week, which was The Tax Tsunami, okay? Where I touch on some of the things that you didn't hear about in the budget that were announced last week, okay? So I've done a detailed list for you of all the things you need to know. But one of the things that wasn't on there was, what wasn't on there was no change to pension tax relief. And this is something which cost the government £35 billion a year. Now, if I'm a betting man, and I'm not, my view is that tax relief is going to move to some sort of simplified basis where we probably all get 28 or 30%, all right? Because at the moment, the most people who get the most tax relief are higher earners. Obviously, it makes sense. And also people who've got more money, right? So they don't really want to be incentivizing people who are going to save anyway to save. So what that means is if you are either a high rate taxpayer or you're getting near to that band, or you would do with a bonus or other income, you might be just on the band now. Pensions are a fantastic deferred savings vehicle, particularly for monies that you're going to need in later life, because the chances are you won't be paying high rate tax on the money that you draw out, right? So even if you're getting tax relief at 40% or 45% going in, you probably won't be paying that level of tax on the money coming out. Remember, we're talking earlier about just simply targeting a 25 grand annual income. You might want more, you might want less, okay? 25 grand, roughly 30 times, means we need a fund of about 750,000. That's equivalent for a 30 years worth of a nurse working for 30 years, getting a pension of 25, that's £1 million, right? So what we really want to do is we want to make use of those monies that we put in now are going to make us the most return. So if you can put more money in and you're debt-free and you've built your emergency savings and your income's stable and you've got enough behind you, then I think really now is the time to be thinking if you're a higher rate taxpayer, because I don't see it continuing, okay? So let's have a look now. Salary sacrifice. What you can do is you can go to your employer, or you could be your own employer, couldn't you? If you own your own company. And you can give up your bonus, you can give up salary, and you can put that in your pension. Your employer can put it in your pension, and there's no national insurance. So what I have done in the past for employers that I've worked for periods of time, I've asked them, I don't want all my salary. Can I please put it in my pension? Oh, and by the way, can you add the 13.8% employer's national insurance that you're not going to pay on that 5 grand or 4 grand or 10 grand or whatever the number is? Can you also add that? Because it makes no odds to you. So if an employer was going to pay you, let's just say a 10 grand bonus, they've had to pay £1,380 in employer's national insurance. If they put £11,380 in your pension, which is the 10 grand they were going to pay you as a bonus, and the employer's national insurance, you get what would have gone to the Inland Revenue as the employer's national insurance in your pot. So I've done this over the years, and I've managed to get 13.8% return before I even worry about tax relief. So that's worth looking at, salary sacrifice. But be very careful because it can affect, for low earners, it can affect maternity pay and certain state benefits. So be very careful there if you're on low income. You can put up to £40,000 a year in, right? So you can put £40,000. So as long as you can put 40,000 as long as you've got earnings of 40,000, okay? That's earnings from employment and self-employment. Your employer could put 40 grand in and only be paying you 10 grand, right? Because an employer can put up to 40,000 in without causing any tax charge, regardless of how much you earn, okay? So employers are different. And if you've got unused relief, if you haven't put the maximum in for the previous 3 years, you can roll forward up to 40 grand for the last 3 years to the current year, right? Now, on the 6th of April this year, the year, was it 17-18, drops out. So 17-18, if you haven't done it, you could bring that forward to this year. So that's where we're looking. But you have to max this year first. You have to do your 40,000 this year before you can bring forward that previous year. So if you're really flush and there's a bonus on the go and you've got lots of money and stuff, it might be worth looking at. But again, don't do it willy-nilly. Do take some advice if you need it. But here's another thing, and in fact, it was one of my readers and listeners asked me before, but I will do chuck questions in. I'm going to get to some more in a minute. He said to me to point out to people the little ruse that if you don't earn any money, all right? If you don't earn any money and you don't pay any income tax or don't much at all, you can put up to 3,600 gross, which is 2,880, and you get tax relief of 720 quid even if you don't pay tax. So my kids do pensions, right? They're not paying any income tax. They put, we put the maximum 2,880 each year because they don't need any earnings and they don't have any income tax. So they're getting income tax relief into their pension. Bear in mind they haven't got any income tax. And that's the same if you're living at home, you're a home carer, you're a stay-at-home mum or dad, or you're caring for someone. You can still do that if you've got the money. So that's not to be sniffed at. So let's just have a look at a couple of the questions here. Let's have a look. Right, let me just go back to some of the other questions. Some good questions here. I don't want to miss them because people are putting them in. Let's have a look then. Right, this is Amit Panchali. If someone is below personal allowances, does a small pension contribution in the education, then is a SIPP worth it? Okay, so someone basically is not paying any income tax. Is it worth to continue putting money in a SIPP, or is it worth adding to an ordinary considerable size ISA? Look, I don't know what your situation is and not what your age is. I'm going to come on to the pros and cons of pensions in a minute. I'm just going to go through. I've got some more cons, and then I think you can make your decision. For me, I do like if I can get tax relief. So let's say I earn 10 grand. All right, I'm working in a low-paid job. I'm getting 10 grand. I'm not paying any income tax. I can put £10,000 into a pension, but I only have to pay 8,000 myself. Okay, now. That doesn't affect your entitlement to state benefits because you're still getting these savings. You're still paying the £2,000. You're not paying any income tax, but the government's putting £2,000 in. You put 18, they put 2, it becomes 10. Now, I don't know what ISA you're investing in, but I don't know of any ISA that can take 8,000 and make it 10 immediately. Now, I know that you're going to have to pay some income tax on 75% of that fund at some stage, but if you are drawing out no more than 12.5 grand when you come to draw the benefits, and you can take 25% of the fund as a tax-free cash lump sum, that to me sounds like a no-brainer, right? That sounds to me very attractive. So I would be questioning why you would not be doing pensions, okay, first, and then ISAs topping up, even if you're on a low pay. And one of the things also is, don't forget, money in a pension is not means tested, and that's another benefit for it. People don't realise that. ISAs are, okay? Monies in savings are, but money in pensions is not means tested. So not generally anyway. I mean, there is a conversion to an income tariff for certain benefits, but I think the purposes of things like tax credits, which were not means tested, but universal credit, normally money in a pension is not normally means tested. So it's different when you get to over 60 because the rules change slightly. So making pension contributions when you're on a low salary, it can make sense. Let's have a look at another question here. If you have an average salary pension, how do I work out what the total pot is worth to see what I can contribute within the limits? Right, that sounds to me that's from someone called Fletchinio. It sounds to me like you're on a final salary pension, a defined benefit pension, which is calculated based on your career average earnings, right? Is that right? If I'm right, give me a thumbs up on that. Sounds to me like that's what it is. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So if you're in a final salary pension, then what's the question here? How do I work out to see what else I can contribute within the limit? Right. Your pension scheme would normally give you a pension input statement. So basically, when you're in a final salary pension, when the benefits go up, the increasing benefits is converted using a factor, okay? It's called an input factor. And your employer would normally give you each year, or you should have a portal, or speak to your HR people or your pension administrator. There should be a portal that gives you an idea. Schemes have a scheme year. Let's say it works 1st of April to the 31st of March, say, right? So your scheme year is just coming up to the end tomorrow. So that will tell you what your scheme input factor is from the beginning of the year to the end, and that will tell you how much of your unused allowance that how much of your annual allowance you've used, and therefore how much you've got left. But here's the thing: if you're not a high earner, and that's important, if you're not a high earner and you haven't built up huge amounts of benefits and you aren't expecting big promotions, then you will have unused carry forward relief from previous years. So you've got 40,000 this year. 40 the previous year, 40 the year before that, 40 the year before that. And if you do make more than 40 as an input, then you can bring those forward. So the only exception is if you're a very, very high earner, and the numbers have changed actually. It's 240,000, I think it is now. Let's have a look. 240,000, between 240 and 312,000. And that was catching a lot of doctors out in the NHS. So you work it out by asking your scheme administrator, can they give you the input factor for your pension benefit accrual? It sounds to me like you're in a final. The fact you're in a career average is not the big issue. It's you're in a final salary scheme. Hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, chuck another one in again. So we'll get this next question. If they reduce tax relief on pension contributions for high rate taxpayers, would it make sense to split contributions between pensions and stocks and shares? Well, look, this is a hypothetical. If tax relief is restricted, then you've got to weigh up, does it make sense to continue to pay into pensions? Let's just look at some of the other pros and cons of pensions. They're protected against bankruptcy, right? So they're inheritance tax free. So if you start to build wealth of more than 325 or 500,000 if you own a property, and you can double those if you're in a married couple or civil partnership, then money in a pension is not in your inheritance, in your estate for inheritance tax. I've got a substantial pension pot, and if I died tomorrow, it's not in my estate for inheritance tax. I haven't got to do anything complicated. If all the time it's in there, so I think pensions have got a lot going for them. The danger comes is if government starts tweaking what they tax you on, taking the benefits out, or if they start pilfering away at the tax-free cash, because you can take up to 25% of a money purchase scheme as tax-free cash. So I think I would suggest to you, we have to wait until the time. If ISAs continue to remain tax-free on taking benefits out, and if tax relief is restricted or made so difficult to get, it might well swing the favour for ISAs. But honestly, if they're going to start tinkering around with taxation of pensions, I'm almost sure they're going to be tinkering around with taxation of ISAs. So I think you can only plan with what we have right now. But I think you're absolutely right. It's something that you need to keep an eye on. All right. So let's have a look. Got any other questions here? Hang on. You're in a defined contribution scheme. So the question. Sorry, let me go back to that question, which was, how do I work out how much I put in? Well, do you know what your employer contributes to your pension for you? Okay. You should have been auto-enrolled into the scheme. There should be some scheme booklet or some scheme portal that will tell you what the contributions are that you're paying. You should be able to log into the pension provider. Say the pension provider is, I don't know, Hargreaves Lansdown or Legal & General or Scottish Widows or whoever. There should be a portal, and ask your HR people, how do I go in and find out what contributions have been made? So, for instance, I work part-time for Salary Finance, and they put money in a pension for me. And there's a portal I can log into Legal & General, separate from my Vanguard pension, and I can immediately see under transactions what contributions have been paid for that year. So I know how much contributions has been paid for the year, and where it's more than 40,000, I've had in the past unused relief, which I've now extinguished. So from this year onwards, I can't put more than 3,333 a month, and neither can the employer, into any pension for me. So I've had to restrict that. If you're not doing 333 and you don't know what the employer's putting in, you're going to need to find that out. So you need to find out, and the easiest way is to say, how do I log in to my workplace pension with the provider, and to find out how much has actually gone in if you're thinking of making a contribution before the end of the tax year, which you might want to do if you're a higher rate taxpayer. And another reason why you might want to make a contribution to a pension before the end of this tax year is because of the child benefit charge. The child benefit tax charge, oh, hi Tamsin, good to see you. The child benefit tax charge it basically hits anyone if they earn more taxable income than 50,000. So it could be one person. So you could have two people in a couple, married or not, civil partners or not. One could be earning 49,000. One could be earning 51. The 51 means that you are subject to the child benefit tax charge. But if you both earn 49,000, you aren't. Okay, and it basically gets scaled away. So once you earn over 60,000, all of the child benefit is gone. So one of the ways that you can get rid of that charge is by making a pension contribution. So not an employer contribution, a personal contribution. If you make a pension contribution, it has the effect of increasing your basic rate tax band. So let's say someone was earning 55 grand taxable earnings, and you can add in taxable, like you might have had rental income or anything, can be from anywhere. But you can make a pension contribution of 5,000. That brings your taxable earnings down to 50. No child benefit tax charge. So really worth looking at. And it's also worth looking at if you're earning over 100,000, anywhere between 100 and 125. And that's because you lose your personal allowance for basically £1 for every £1 for every £2 that you earn over 100 grand. So someone earning 125 grand has got no personal income tax allowance at which they pay no tax on. Whereas we all can have £12,500 of income that we don't pay any tax on. If you earn for every £2 you earn over 100 grand, you lose personal allowance. So someone's earning 125 grand has no personal tax allowance. And that means that income between 100,000 and 125,000 is taxed at 60% effective marginal rate. If you make a pension contribution, what you do is you start to reclaim your personal income tax allowance because you have expanded your basic rate band. It's nearly 60% tax relief on a pension contribution for people earning with taxable income between 100 and 125. So that's a nice little one there for you. Obviously, pensions grow tax-free, and you can have up to 25% tax-free cash. So well worth looking at there. Now, some downsides to pensions. We should look at this, and you need to compare that with things like LISAs, buying rental property, investing in businesses. You can't use it to buy a residential property. You can use personal pension to buy commercial property, but you need to move into a more expensive self-invested scheme or a director's scheme. If you run your own limited company or you know someone who does, then a director's pension, it's more expensive to run, it's more complicated, you need to take advice, you probably need more substantial pots. There's lots you can do as a company director with pension funds. Whether you should, whether it makes sense for you, whether it's cost effective, whether it's good for your financial security, who knows? Just because you could do something doesn't mean you should. I keep my pensions ultra simple, okay? I do all my messing around outside. I don't mess around with what's in the pension pot. And I've just found that the keep your affairs simple is a good way to go. You can't access them before, at the moment, age 55. Okay, so it's not the same as state pension I mentioned earlier, right? Which for all of us is 67, and it's going up to 68 for people born after 1972. So what this means, there's a window of opportunity here, is that the age at which you can access your personal pension pot is changing to 57. And it's going up to 57 for anyone born after the 5th of April 1973. The earliest at which you can take pension benefits is 57. This is your personal pension benefits. But here's the thing, this comes in April 2028, right? So 7 years' time. And there's going to be a window of opportunity for people aged between 55, who are age 55 up to the 6th of April 2028. And they'll have a 2-year window of opportunity to decide to take benefits. So you don't have to worry at the moment, but if you're born after April 72, for you it's 57. For people like me, it's 55. And then there's going to be a sort of window of opportunity for people sort of born between 1971 and 73. And there's a maximum amount you can put in pensions. And sadly, or thankfully, or I'm pleased, I don't know, but I'm getting nearer to it. And the maximum you can put in is 1.078,900,000. I know your heart bleeds, I know. But the problem is that once you start getting nearer to that, there are ways of mitigating it, but you can end up paying tax charges. And those tax charges vary depending on whether you take the money out as a lump sum or whether you take it out as an income. If you take it out as a big lump sum, the excess, they'll charge you 55% tax. If you take it out as an income, they'll charge you 25% plus whatever income you pay. So what you really want to do is, you probably haven't got the problem at the moment, but if you are nearing getting to that lifetime allowance of over £1 million, you probably need to take advice from a professional financial advisor, because there are things you can do to sort of take benefits but not take them, and freeze the benefits and still have them growing. It's too complicated for our life tonight. But there are ways that you can effectively still participate in investment growth, okay, and getting yourself in a position where you're not going to have that charge, but you do need to take professional advice on that. So that limit is a bit of an issue. Let's have a list. Tamsin, born 4 months too late for the age 55. Yeah, love it. Okay. Notepad's full, Jason. General questions. No, the only reason they're nearly an hour, Peter, is just because of the amount of information. I've got quite a few questions here. Let's have a look. Let's talk pensions. What else is there? Great advice around the child benefit and loss of personal allowance. Okay. Right, so I'm almost finished. I won't keep you too longer if there are no more questions. But what I do want to say is just about this. Between now and the end of the tax year, you've got your chance to decide where you put your money, okay? You know what I say. Build your emergency fund. Get rid of smelly debt first, okay? But the only exception is if you know for certain that you've got money coming to you in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and I mean certain, I mean 100%, absolutely, and you were going to make a pension contribution in the next tax year, all right? But it makes more sense for you to do it now. I would try and do it now if you're going to get tax relief at your high rate now, if it's going to give you your child benefit thing back, if it's going to give you your personal allowance back, if it's going to mean that you don't lose your carried forward allowance from the years before. And do check out your state pension benefit entitlement using the state pension calculator. Do check out the Which's retirement age to tell you which the Consumers Association go and says that's their retirement. And if you know someone who's coming nearer to taking benefits, go and check out that Paul Lewis May 2020 blog on taking benefits and plugging any gaps. But here's my message for you now. The more you save, the less you spend, the more you're going to have, the more life you can have. But it's not all about planning for tomorrow. You've got to have fun today. As I say, you're looking for progress, not perfection. No, there's no real money stories this week. We're having a week off. What we have got, just before you go, is we've got the website going live. We've got for the new holiday let that I've been building. Got a big feature in the Financial Times this weekend. Get the Financial Times double page spread. All about my self-build journey, loads of pictures. It's also going to be online on ft.com, and we're also going to be taking bookings, okay? So if you want to come up to sunny Suffolk, the website will be going live on Friday. Shameless plug. Holiday let, if you want to have 2 or 3 days up here. Sorry, no special rates because we know we're going to be busy. It's been dressed beautifully by my wife. It's like home from home, believe you me. This is a beautiful, beautiful house in the grounds of my garden. If you want to spend some time with me, you're welcome to as well, but I can't guarantee that, and I won't promise that, and I certainly won't put myself on you. But, we're up here in sunny Suffolk. Hope to see some of you. If you want a holiday getaway, check out the website. It'll be on my main website, and you can check that out. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I'll see you again next week, and I think I may have someone very interesting joining me next week. Thanks, everyone.